everybody, it is Catherine here from Continue the Magic, and this is your news update for the week of August 17th. And of course, we just came out of the D23 weekend, so lots of things were announced. All of the panels happened. Very exciting weekend for the Disney fan community. So we're going to specifically dig into the Horizons Parks panel today. There's a lot of updates and details that came out here, so let's get right into it. Make sure that you like, subscribe, and hit that notification button. It really helps me out at the channel and it makes sure that you never miss a video. So let's jump right into it. Now, before we get into the details of what was announced, let's talk about the panel as a whole in that opening number. So first of all, I think Neil Patrick Harris was a perfect choice to host this event. He's not only known in the Disney community for his involvement with like the Candlelight Processional and being involved with kind of different things throughout Disney, but also as a Disney fan himself. So when you were getting some of those kind of deep cuts and those call outs during this presentation, it really felt like he knew it and he felt it and he was enjoying them along with us. So I think that was a phenomenal choice to host the event. Now, for the musical number itself, I love how self-aware Disney was during this. I think it was a great production, seeing all of the kind of Disney animatronics come to life in this musical sequence. Very well done. Some of my favorite callouts. I love that the Ellen's Adventure, Universe of Energy animatronic was involved. I really liked when they did the Olaf animatronic that just kind of fell over during the presentation. If you haven't seen that video from when they were first bringing out the new interactive Olaf animatronic, it did have a moment where it froze and fell over on its back. And I love that they can have fun with that. They can call attention to it. Same thing when they called out the Hatbox Ghost for being in the wrong location at Walt Disney World. That in theory, because Madame Leota hasn't done the seance and hasn't summoned the ghosts, that it makes no sense that the Hatbox Ghost appears before that sequence in there. The fact that they can call themselves out, they're willing to have fun with it, poke fun at themselves. I love that. I really feel the deep cuts that they referenced in here were super well done. Throughout the entire presentation, I felt kind of seen as a Disney Parks fan specifically. So I think they did a great job. We got some of those great cameos. We had Paige O'Hara, we had Joe Rohde come up, and then of course, John Stamos as Uncle Orville. So overall, if you haven't had a chance to see the opening presentation, it is still available to stream on Disney+. So even if you're not going to go through the whole Parks panel, because we will be talking about all the news updates today, I do recommend catching the first 10 minutes just to take that in. So now let's move over to Carousel of Progress. So not a whole lot of new details here because they had given us a fair amount of information on the new timeline that they're doing and kind of what they're doing with the new scenes. The big announcement here was the voices of Mother and Father. So for Mother, we are getting Jamie Lee Curtis, and for Father, we are getting Bryan Cranston. So I don't know that these two people were particularly on my radar. I know there was talks of people wanting Tom Hanks to be the father in the Carousel of Progress, but I do think that they're a solid choice. Now, I'm saying that with the perspective of I grew up with, Bryan Cranston as the father and Malcolm in the Middle, Jamie Lee Curtis being the mother from Freaky Friday. So these two people in those positions totally makes sense to me. So I think they're good choices, solid kind of stars that we are all familiar with their voices, those tones. I think they'll be a very good fit as those voices in the Carousel of Progress. The other thing we got here was the concept art for the 1980s scene. We did already know that this was going to take place at Halloween, and this is also the scene you can see in the concept art here where Sarah is going to be taking center stage for the first time, so she will be in the main scene. We're going to have John being on the porch, decorating for Halloween, and then we do get our Uncle Orville in the bathtub, as we all know and love. Next, we're going to hop over to Disneyland. Interestingly here, the announcements were mostly that they are bringing back existing shows and parades. So we have the Remember Dreams Come True. So this is a nighttime spectacular returning to Disneyland. They're going to kind of update some of the projections. So you're going to have that at the Rivers of America, on Small World, and all the way up Main Street. So that is returning. At California Adventure, you're getting a return of the original Worlds of Color. I know everybody is a huge fan of that. That is the nighttime spectacular that I saw when I was at Disneyland. So it's nice to hear that this one's coming back. It was super moving and beautiful at the time, and I can't imagine that that has changed. And then the last one is that the Magic Happens Parade is coming back as well. So interesting that the big announcements here were just that they are bringing back classic favorites. I'm sure the fan community is happy to see that these are coming back, some of these beloved moments and kind of parades and spectaculars at the park, but not the hugest of announcements for sure. So one of the things I had predicted last week was that we were going to get an announcement about a redo of Space Mountain in Walt Disney World. So we were close, but not quite there. There is redos of Space Mountain coming to the parks, but not to Walt Disney World. It's coming to Paris and it's coming to Tokyo. So the one in Paris isn't a huge deal. This is kind of getting rid of Hyperspace Mountain, and they're going to be returning to the original idea of Space Mountain at that park. I haven't had a chance to experience this one yet, but I love that whole Jules Verne feel of that area. So that from the Earth to the Moon, returning to that, I think that's a great thing. I think getting back to that root of what Tomorrowland is supposed to be is a great idea. And then over in Tokyo, we're getting Earthrise. So this is, again, a reimagining of Space Mountain. Seems like it's going to be a larger update for that park. So great to see that Space Mountain is getting some love. Is Walt Disney World still on the list of places that could probably use it? Absolutely. But we'll talk about this with one of the announcements that's happening out later, but this is probably more of a long-term goal. Next, keeping with the space theme, we're going over to Spaceship Earth. So they have announced that they are going to be updating every scene in Spaceship Earth. So this is a huge update. Now, they are not getting rid of that kind of timeline progression. They are going to keep that story arc. So my guess is that we won't be starting from scratch here. So they're going beyond just the history of communication, and they're kind of tying in the history of communication through the storytelling narrative of human connection. And I think this fits in with a lot of the scenes that we already have in there. Like, that is the whole purpose of communicating, is to connect with one another. So I do still think we'll see a lot of those historical timelines of, cavemen, and I'm sure the Phoenicians aren't going anywhere, but they will probably at least plus up all of those scenes. They have said that they're going to touch every scene in at least some way, but this could be added projection mappings, maybe, one or two effects or animatronics. And then, of course, I'm sure when we get closer to the end that they're going to bring us a little bit more into the future. I would love to see them update that kind of end interactive moment. I love the concept of it. It is glitchy for sure. Half the time our heads are cut off, or like half of a head there. So I love that it's interactive. I love that they found a way to kind of keep that descent back to Earth interesting, but it could absolutely use some love. So it's nice to see that Spaceship Earth is going to get it, but hopefully some of those really classic scenes that we have in there, that we're not going to lose all of those. One announcement that I didn't see coming and I'm super excited about is that we are finally getting a fix for the Yeti at Expedition Everest and Animal Kingdom. I also love that they really embraced the fact that the fan community has been referring to this strobe light effect as Disco Yeti for quite some time, to the point where they brought Gloria Gaynor to come and sing disco music to say goodbye to the Yeti and kind of announce and celebrate this redo. Now, the reality around this is because the Yeti is so structurally built into that. This is why they haven't done the update, is because you can't remove that animatronic or make repairs to that animatronic without removing sections of the mountain, removing track. So this is going to be a large downtime, big fix. So be prepared. Obviously, I don't expect this to happen until after Tropical Americas is fully open, just because this park really can't spare the capacity of losing another attraction at the moment. But with that new section open, it absolutely makes sense that this is the right time to take Expedition Everest down for a while, give it the full repairs. They might even replace the track while they're there to kind of do all of the updates at once. But we are finally going to get a full Yeti animatronic back up and alive in Expedition Everest, which is so exciting to hear. Now let's go into the Marvel updates. So this is happening in the international parks. Let's start over in Hong Kong with the Stark Expo. So they are going to be doing a massive expansion here. So one is they're going to have the Quinjet kind of landing pad, and they're going to use this as a way to get the meet and greets up in this area. So obviously it makes sense that the Avengers would come, they would land in this space, and that is where you could easily bring out pretty much any character you want to be able to do a meet and greet in this area. The other one is a new attraction. This is built around the Avengers testing lab. And obviously, when you have a lab like that, you want your smartest kind of developers in there. And who better to head that up than Peter Parker, who is always working on the latest and greatest tech to kind of improve his skills. So this is going to be a new 120 feet tall attraction. They're going to use the sling ring as kind of a mechanism to take you through different realms so that you can then go through this and interact with the different characters throughout the Marvel Universe. So big expansion coming over to Hong Kong. Now over in Shanghai, this one's really interesting. This is going to be the first land dedicated not to Avengers as a whole, but specifically it is just a Spider-Man land, which is crazy. Now, he is one of my favorite characters. I think Tom Holland as Peter Parker, he does such a phenomenal job of bringing that heart to that character and kind of that innocence and that sweetness that you really kind of relate and feel for that character. So I absolutely think that he is capable of kind of supporting an entire land, but I'm surprised that Disney is making that commitment to one specific character, especially a character where they currently kind of share the ownership with Sony, right? Like basically Spider-Man is on loan from Sony. There's a deal there, but the Spider-Man universe is very much cinematically owned by the Sony company. So, I mean, I'm excited to see that Spider-Man is getting this love. And a cool thing here, so we're not only going to have a new coaster, the idea here is that Peter's spider bots have built this coaster, so I'm sure something is absolutely going to go wrong, as it often does. But the spider bots, they do their best. But the really cool thing here is that they're actually working with local artists in Shanghai to do 20 murals around this area. So these are Spider-Man themed, obviously, but I love that they're working with local artists to get that kind of stylized version of these murals throughout this land. I think this is going to be beautiful, and I can't wait to see them in person. And then hopping over to California Adventure, we've talked about some of this with kind of our Disneyland Forward. They did give a little bit more details. One detail is that the walkway between Avengers Campus and Carsland is going to be reopening soon. So if you've been going to the parks, this is great news for you. Having that dead end is never great. You really need kind of that through flow, that ability to kind of work your way through the different lands at the Disney parks to keep that natural flow going and, you know, prevent bottlenecks. So having that kind of walkway reopen is a big deal. The other thing is they gave us a little bit more details around the attractions, mostly about who we're going to see on there. So let's talk about the Infinity Defense. So this one, we're going to get an introduction by Ms. Marvel. I loved that TV series. I thought it was really well done. And honestly, we haven't seen much of her in the recent past. So it's nice to see that she's getting some love again. So we are going to be recruits here. So she's going to kind of walk us through that. We're also getting Jeremy Renner back as Hawkeye. We're getting Anthony Mackie back as Captain America. We're going to have Chris Hemsworth as Thor, and Robert Downey Jr. is coming back as Iron Man. So we got to see a little bit of the behind the scenes of this, of filming some of these scenes. So great to see these actors back. And same thing over with the Flight Lab. We're going to get Robert Downey Jr., we're going to get Anthony Mackie, and we're going to get Brie Larson back as Captain Marvel. We also did get an opening date. They're saying opening in 2028. They didn't say when in the year, but at least we have a little bit more of a timeline here. All right, let's hop over to the animal kingdom. So the biggest thing that surprised me here was the announcement from Harrison Ford himself that he will be the model for Indiana Jones in this new attraction. So why this is so exciting is because this is the first time that this has been done. If you've been on the ride in either in Tokyo or in Disneyland, they specifically were not allowed to use Harrison Ford. It is not Harrison Ford's voice, so it doesn't really look like him. Obviously, from afar, Indiana Jones looks like Indiana Jones, but having Harrison Ford kind of buy in and support this, that is very exciting news. I would love to see that roll out to the other parks where they could do an update to the animatronic and bring him. But the reality is the cost of doing that won't really change the attendance levels for those attractions, so I don't really see that happening. But they also gave us more storyline around this. So they really are going to be tying into that Mayan temple and that Mayan culture. So from the aesthetics of this, it looks like they've really paid close attention to make that kind of aesthetic of this really look authentic. So the story here is that it's going to be taking place before the Crystal Skull. So it's going to be taking place in the 1950s. And it's a brand new story where there is kind of rumors that in this Mayan temple, there is a gateway to the Mayan underworld. And that gateway is guarded by a giant snake. So obviously, this is going to come to fruition. Of course, it had to be a snake with Indiana Jones, not only because it's Indy, but also it's a genuine tie-in to this Mayan culture story. So very cool that they're tying that all together. And if we're going to go in there, we're going to get sucked into that Mayan underworld, and we're going to get to experience that adventure. So great details coming out here. I love how this is coming across. Going to the other side of Tropical Americas, we're going to talk about the carousel that we're going to be getting here. So they showed us the 22 hand-carved carousel characters that we're going to be seeing on this. I love that they even called themselves out of, like, Disney merchandise is going to love this. Obviously, we're going to see collectibles where people are going to want all 22 of these representations of these hand-carved attraction pieces. So again, family-friendly carousel, nothing super exciting, but I love that they're leaning into that aesthetic and they're giving it its own kind of flair and then tying it into the different animals throughout the Disney and Pixar films. And then lastly, obviously, we're going to go to the Encanto attraction. So here we are going to be inside Casita and we are celebrating Antonio's gift day with the magical family. So we are there to join them on this adventure. Antonio is going to get his gift and we're going to go into his room. If you've seen the movie, you know that his room kind of opens into a giant rainforest where all of the animals live. So we got a little bit more concept art here. We're going to get over 50 animals that we get to see throughout this attraction. They're really tying in to make sure that it matches thematically with Encanto and with the region that we're working with, that those animals are all applicable to that area. They showed the capybara, which is both massive and adorable. It looks great, so I'm really excited to what we're getting here. And the other great thing here is that they have announced that this will be a no height requirement attraction. So that does give you an idea of the thrill level. We're talking like a slow moving attraction. We're not going to be whipped around. It's going to be more like a small world, you know, something small and easy. But I do think that is the right move here. And I think the sets, the animatronics, the show scenes will be enough to keep you engaged, that you don't need that extra level of thrill. I think it will be a gorgeous attraction. Now, speaking of no height requirement attractions, they are doing the same thing over with Coco in California Adventure. So again, think Small World or think of the boat ride in the Mexico Pavilion, this slow-moving boat ride where the scenes, the music, the colors, the animatronics are going to be what draw you into this one. So the story that they're doing here is because this movie is all about remembrance and about family, they're kind of doing the queue is going to be a museum dedicated to the music of Hector. And then when you go on to the actual attraction, you're actually going to be in kind of Miguel's memory as he remembers his adventure. So we will go through the plot line of the story there, but with the idea that we're going through his memories and we're not living this live to tie into today. So that way they can kind of segue, because they did announce that Coco 2 is coming. They can kind of tie in a little bit from the classic movie and also make sure that it goes well into Coco 2 so that they can kind of draw in some of those references as well. All right, let's go back to international and let's talk about Disneyland Paris, and specifically at Disney Adventure World, that they are getting the first ever Lion King based attraction. So they have confirmed that this will be based on the classic cartoon aesthetic. I know for a while it looked like it might be on the live action remake. I think going back to the cartoon classic is absolutely the way to go here. That movie is timeless. It is still beloved. Absolutely. I think this is great. They have confirmed that we are going to be going through the full timeline of that movie. So we are going to follow Simba from, a cub all the way to the end of the movie with that final battle with Scar. We're getting the good and the bad here. They didn't call it out specifically, but I think this means that we are getting that wildebeest scene. I think we have to. And I almost wonder if that's what they'll do with, because it is a flume ride. It looks very similar to the layout of the Splash Mountains that we have, or Tiana's as it is now. I wonder if kind of going if you remember the scene in the movie with the wildebeest, that they kind of go over the edge of that canyon. I feel like that is a great moment to do that flume, that you feel that drop. Now, timing wise, unless they really change the layout of this attraction, that drop is closer to the end of the attraction, and obviously that is fairly near the beginning of the start of the Lion King movie. So I don't know if timing wise it would make sense to have all of that storytelling after, but because they are kind of building this from scratch, they could change that layout, have the drop earlier, and have more show scenes after, but it does take away from that kind of building to a climax. So they may end up choosing to tie that into kind of the big battle with Scar instead, or you could have it even in the Hakuna Matata scene, but I think that would take away some of the drama that you want to tie into that drop. So my guess is wildebeest or Scar would kind of be where that would land. But it's nice to see that Lion King is, again, still getting some love even to this day. Heading over to Tokyo, let's talk about Wreck-It Ralph. So this is going to be an interactive ride, it seems like, because they have sugar bugs that you're going to need to convert back to their original form. So my assumption is that this is going to be something similar to kind of Buzz Lightyear, Space Ranger Spin, or the Monsters, Inc. ride that they have, where you have a shooter that you can kind of target those things and convert them back. And we are going to be kind of encountering King Candy, so we are expecting to have a villain kind of take us off track there. My guess is that's how the conversions are happening. So a little bit of story there. So this one should be fun once that's up and running. So moving over to Carsland, we did finally get details on what that second attraction is going to be. So this is going to be based around Miss Fritter from Cars 3. So she is kind of our demolition derby boss, and it's going to be a spinner ride. So something a little bit more low-key, but I do like that theming. I think that there's ways that they could make that entertaining and exciting if they do it right. So that's nice to see that that's coming. And then they finally gave us more details around what we're really going to see with these rally racers. So we are going to get to interact with Lightning McQueen and Tomater and some of the other characters from the world. And you are going to have, it does sound like there'll be more than one vehicle on the road at the time that you can do that rally race together. So you're going to start by kind of going up towards the peak, so some mountain climbing there, so through some beautiful scenery. When you do get up to the peaks, there's going to be snow-covered peaks, so this should be beautiful, especially they were talking about beautiful at night when the kind of moonlight would shimmer off of that. And then this is where the real race starts, that you kind of race down the hill. You're going to go through that, and then you're going to end going through the kind of geyser area. So a lot of kind of shooting water. They're going to have one large geyser there called Old Tankful. They're leaning full into the puns in this area, it seems. So honestly, this attraction looks really amazing. I just love the amount of detail and theming that is going into this area. I think aesthetically, it's going to look beautiful in that kind of frontierland space. I do think that's still eventually going to maybe change the naming convention, but they haven't said anything about that yet. For the Disney Cruise Lines, they have said by the late 2030s, there's going to be 13 ships up and running. So a lot happening here. They did open, I think it was 3 new ships since the last D23. So they're really investing in that cruise line experience. So they are going to be doubling the number of cruises that are going out of the California area, so out of San Diego. So a lot more Disney Cruise Line love over in California. They announced that the Disney Wish is going to be heading over to Europe, so that it's going to be doing a tour there for the first time. We do have a new ship that is going over into the Asia area, so they're going to be offering Asian cruises very soon. The Magic and the Wonder are going back to Alaska, so I know that's a super popular one. I know there's a sledding dog excursion with those that is supposed to be one of the best excursions that you can experience on the cruise lines, so that's great to see that they're getting a little bit more love. And we did get more details about the Believe. So we found out that, so this is a Wish class cruise line. We found out that on the bow of the ship, we're going to be getting Tinkerbell. On the stern, we're going to get Woody and Buzz kind of drawing Believe on with crayon. And then in our main hall, we're going to be getting Moana. So some great character choices there to see that going. They haven't given full details, but we are expecting to see that in 2027. Now, they did announce a new class of cruise ship. This is going to be between the smaller and the large ones, so more of a middle class to open up some regions that those large ships can't really get to. So they gave us a teaser, but this is like the most teaser of teasers I've ever seen. It was mostly sketches of drawing what a ship could look like. So very few details here. It really just was a taste of letting us know they are working on a new class of ship with 0 details to back that up. All right, let's head to Monstropolis. So this one I'm very excited about. We did get a new song intro here, and this is a new Randy Newman original song for Monstropolis. I love that they brought Randy Newman back. This is the first time he has ever written a song specifically for the theme parks, and they announced that this is going to be tied into that new theater attraction. So that attraction is called Welcome to Monstropolis, also the name of the song. And the idea here is that this is a show to kind of showcase the world of Monstropolis to the humans. So the idea here is Sully's, trying to keep it simple, highlight what the world is like. And of course, Mike is trying to go way over the top. So we should see some antics there. Very cool to see this. It ties into that whole idea that they're opening up Monstropolis to the human world to kind of bridge that gap so that we can remove that fear and kind of work together. So it all ties in nicely. I do like that it is a new, unique show and that it's not just a port of the Laugh Floor. Now, what that means for the Laugh Floor long term, because I don't think it makes sense that it stays in Tomorrowland. I think it will short term. There's no point until these new lands start opening up, closing anything in the Magic Kingdom. But I do expect at some point it really doesn't make sense there. So with this opening, I think eventually we are going to see Laugh Floor kind of get phased out of Tomorrowland. They also gave us a little bit more idea of what we're going to see in the land in general. So we're going to have Scare Pig Pizza. So we are still keeping our fast food pizza option here. We're going to have the Monsters U Alumni Club, and within that, a Scares Alumni Club. So we're going to have that. We're also going to get the Scareporium shop. So of course you have to have your merchandise shop in the area. This absolutely makes sense. And then the big exciting one that we all know is coming is, of course, Harryhausen's. So they gave us a little glimpse of the animatronic that we're going to see there of the octopus kind of making the sushi. Sushi is a new choice for Disney, so I think this restaurant is going to be super popular when it opens up. Whether sushi is popular long term, I'm a huge fan, but I don't know that it's necessarily my first choice on a hot Florida day. But I think the theming of this restaurant will really make it worthwhile to make that trip. And the really exciting news, we kind of guessed this during last week's video with our predictions, but they have announced that they will indeed be opening this up in phases. The coaster is going to take a little bit longer, so they're going to open the rest of the area first, and it is happening in 2027. So that is just next year. Now, they didn't give us any type of timeline. It could be December 31st, 2027 for all we know, but we do have that opening date. My guess is they'll probably aim for summer, and then realistically probably have it open by mid to late summer with the delays, but very exciting that this is opening up so soon. Again, that Hollywood Studios absolutely needs that extra capacity. And they did give us a
more neutral and it will belong to education. Let's go resign with loyalty.
mercy about initial seasons.
You know, we were just at the 22 and they showed us this story set the Progress animatic and 5%. Look, we've got
This is absolute
23
large it's action. So get ready for that.
I think the thing is that 4 seconds and it launched at Triple Ball. This is going to be mind-blowing. It's just a stretch.
Categories.
And one of the 4 coaches.
Carry those places. A lot of these had tighter clients. Yes, we had Toy Story.
The rest of the land is looking really good.
Here we are with another large attraction, but honestly, this is
Next year.
Now let's talk villains. So the big announcement here is not what I would call a big announcement, but we finally got a name for the land, and the name is Villainsland. Woohoo! Now, it makes sense, right? Like if you look at, Magic Kingdom as a whole, everything is something land. Fantasyland, Adventureland, Frontierland. Totally makes sense that Villainsland should be the name. We've been calling it that all along, but it was just funny how they kind of called this out. But honestly, sometimes the most obvious answer is the right answer. You don't need to overthink it. So Villainsland it is. And they've given us more of the storytelling of this land as a whole. So the idea here is you kind of go through an enchanted forest and you find this wishing well. And rather than having good wishes sent into the well, like we usually do with like Snow White's wishing well by the castle, someone puts an evil wish into this well, and that evil magic kind of spills out, cracks the well open, and starts taking over the world around it. So you're going to have this like twisted version of the enchanted forest, which looks really cool. I think this is a great idea. And then of course, if you have magic, or specifically dark magic spilling over into an area, obviously that is going to draw your villains there who are going to want to reclaim that power. So specifically, the interesting thing that they kind of said here is that it's going to be aesthetically tied to the villain of the area. So here they called out Cruella, they called out Dr. Facilier, and they called out the Evil Queen. And that aesthetically, we might have sections of Villainsland that look like those are the villains who have taken over that specific area. We also did finally get confirmation of what these rides are going to be. So unfortunately, we are not getting our Yzma and Kronk roller coaster. I think the concept for that is so perfectly built for it, but I understand that it is a niche movie. It is beloved. Those characters are beloved, and then Patrick Warburton is always welcome in the Disney parks in my books, but I understand why they didn't go in this direction. So the coaster we are getting is for Maleficent, and we did get to see a model of that. So you're seeing some of the details there. But we will be going through the kind of the briar patch that we have there and the castle as it's taken over by Maleficent. So this looks super cool. Now, the second attraction is going to be kind of from the perspective of the magic mirror and what they're using that for. So this is going to take place underneath the castle in the catacombs where the magic mirror lives. And we're going to be getting his perspective of the villains. So you'll be pulled into kind of the mirror universe. And this is their way to tie in a bunch of Disney villains into one attraction. Now, looking at the concept art here, it does look like a boat. You kind of see the fog. So it does look like we will likely be using the Shanghai Pirates ride technology here, so that it'll give you the opportunity to not only have a boat ride, but be able to pivot them, look in different directions, speed up, slow down, do a lot more of those interactive elements. I think that is probably what we're going to see with this. But it's interesting to see that they're finding a way to pull many villains into one attraction. I think conceptually, it makes sense. I know storytelling-wise, it's a little bit more difficult, but they did this with the villain show where they use the magic mirror to pull everyone together and show the perspectives of the villains. So it makes sense that was almost like a precursor and a test to see if that storytelling worked. And since that's going over decently well, they're porting that over into a ride. So they don't have to build a ride for each individual villain. Obviously, this is too tough. It makes sense to kind of honor them all in one attraction here. So very exciting news. Again, this one's still very far off, but I love the concept for this world, and I can't wait to see how this gets pulled off and then what they do with it for the Halloween parties, because man, is this so perfect for Mickey's Not So Scary. I also love that at the end of this, they brought back Glenn Close as Cruella. When she turned around and I saw who it was, I was so thrilled. She looks the same. Dear Lord, Glenn Close, you are doing a great job. And she's just as charismatic in that character as ever. So I loved that live action 101 Dalmatians when I was growing up. I was so thrilled to see her back. I think she did a wonderful job with the role. Man, was she harsh to the other presenters for that panel. But I thought that was super great to bring her back. And I wonder what that means for the land of how she's going to be represented. So the last two announcements are very much high-level teaser announcements, but both extremely exciting. So I kind of teased at this earlier, but one is that Tomorrowland in Disneyland is getting a redo. It is long overdue. Tomorrowland as a concept has been degrading over the years. We've seen it in Disneyland, kind of throwing in the launch bay there, like, yes, Star Wars. Technically, it takes place in the past. It doesn't actually make sense in Tomorrowland at all, but it's space and futuristic, and I can see how you get away with it. But you look at Walt Disney World, you've got Monsters, Inc. in there. I don't know what they're doing there. It really doesn't fit thematically. You had Stitch for a little while, but that's closed and we're just not utilizing this space. So far they only called out Disneyland, that overall it's going to be getting new attractions, new open spaces, and just a new refresh to that whole concept. So this isn't just exciting for Disneyland, but I'm hoping that this is exciting for Walt Disney World, that this means that, once those new lands open in the Magic Kingdom, that maybe it could get that same kind of love. It can upgrade the Speedway to get electric cars. We can move Monsters, Inc. out of there because they will have their own land. We can do something with the old Alien Encounter space. R.I.P. Alien Encounter, you're still one of my favorites. But both of these lands, Tomorrowland has always been conceptually my favorite. I love that specifically. I would love for them to kind of lean into the retro modern look. I love that 1950s aesthetic of the future. I would love to see them kind of lean in that because it is timeless, a timeless view of that aesthetic. And if you saw the Fantastic Four movie, man, did they ever lean into that. Like once I saw the look of that movie, didn't even matter what the plot line was anymore. I was in just because that is kind of my favorite space to live in. I love being immersed in that retro future space. So I'm hoping that that is the way they go with this. They gave 0 details, 0 timeline, but Tomorrowland is getting some love. And then to close off the event, I love how they introduced this, tying in that iconic scene from the Great Movie Ride where you stop and your villain tour guide gets off and you get your regular tour guide back. I love that they did that. And then that he turned around and you had Neil Patrick Harris dressed as Dreamfinder with Figment. So this attraction, oh my gosh, I know the original well. I loved it so much. It is not anything like it should be. Like Figment just deserves more. And I love the Dreamfinder. I love the relationship that they had together and that story. And they kind of tested this out with bringing out some comics around Dreamfinder and Figment a while ago. So I love that this is finally getting the love it deserves. Again, we just opened up a bunch of things in Epcot. It's got a little bit more capacity that it can handle this going down. And the reality is Figment currently is not eating capacity in that park. So I don't even know that you'll really notice. Again, no details, no timeline, no name, but they just let us know that Figment and Dreamfinder are coming back. So honestly, this is the largest investment in the Disney parks that they've ever done. Like they are expanding like mad at every park and internationally with the new opening of eventually an Abu Dhabi park as well. So the investment in the Disney parks is so thrilling. They are really starting to embrace the fans of the parks, knowing that this is the true Disney fan, these people who are going to come time after time. I felt like they really kind of connected with those Disney adults, Disney lifelong fans in this whole presentation. The kind of segues between the different things where Neil Patrick Harris was doing the scenes as father from the Carousel of Progress, calling out what they were going to talk about in the next area. Beautifully written, beautifully performed. I really felt that they got it. And I can't wait to see what comes next. So that is all of the news. I know this is a bit of a long one, but a lot happened this time. Thank you so much for joining us, and I will see you next time.